News when you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Nathan Hager.
And I'm Karen Moskow.
Karen, we begin with the global trade war. European Union officials will meet in the coming days to discuss how to respond to a possible no-deal trade scenario with President Trump. The move comes as the U.S. is said to be seeking tariffs on EU goods higher than 10% with limited exceptions. We get more from Bloomberg's Oliver Crook in Berlin.
At the end of the day, I think that their frustration, their difficulty is that it is going to come down to Trump at the end of the day, how he's feeling very close to the negotiations. I was at the G20 just last week, and I got a feeling from some of the finance ministers, many of them didn't want to speak on the record on this, but saying that basically they did feel that the United States was softening a little bit, potentially because they're taking on a sort of trade war against everybody all at once. But there was also this sentiment out there that in the long term, this negotiation, whatever happens over the next couple of weeks, is probably not the end of the discussion in terms of tariffs with the United States. So potentially for many of these countries looking to build coalitions outside of Europe, not just the EU, something bigger in order to potentially take on the United States in a more confrontational manner, because who knows what the next few years will hold.
Bloomberg's Oliver Crook says President Trump wrote to the EU earlier in the month warning that the bloc would face a 30% tariff on most of its exports on August 1st.
Nathan, Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick says he's confident a deal with the EU can get done, but he's sticking with the August 1st deadline for higher tariff rates on major trading partners and a baseline of 10% for everyone else.
The world is paying 10% right now, and China's paying 30%. 10% is definitely going to stay. The small countries are likely to be 10%, but the bigger countries are likely to pay higher. That's just the way it's going to be, because we can't have these $1 trillion trade deficit.
And Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick spoke on CBS's Face the Nation, heard every Sunday on Bloomberg Radio.
And Karen, President Trump is pushing back on a report that Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent warned him that ousting Fed Chair Jay Powell would be bad for markets. In a post on Truth Social, the president called the Wall Street Journal, quote, typically untruthful. He went on to say he knows better than anyone what's good for markets, touting recent record highs for the major indexes. The Journal cited sources who said Bessent warned attempting to oust Powell would result in political and legal obstacles.
Nathan, the yen is strengthening against the dollar as investors digest the impact of Japan's election results. Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba says he intends to stay on despite his ruling coalition failing to secure a majority in the 248-seat upper house in a crucial parliamentary election. David Boiling is a director at the Eurasia Group.
This is sort of the second punch that Ishiba has taken. I think it's very hard. He was already on shaky ground. He's even on more shaky ground to remain as prime minister. He's vowed to do so. We'll see what he says at his press conference today. But, Taro Aso, very influential member, former prime minister, has already said that he wants to push him out. So I think there's going to be, the knives are coming out, and we'll just have to see if he can hang on. It's not going to be easy.
Eurasia Group's David Boiling. The loss is another blow to Ishiba's coalition, making it a minority in both houses following its October defeat in the lower house election.
Well, Karen, we're continuing to follow this. A worldwide cyber attack underway after hackers exploited a widely used Microsoft program. We get the very latest from Bloomberg's John Tucker. John, what's happening?
Hackers spotted a security flaw in Microsoft's SharePoint servers, Nathan, and this has allowed them to launch a worldwide attack on government agencies and businesses over the past few days. The U.S. Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency says the vulnerability allowed hackers to access file systems and also internal configurations, as well as execute code. More than 10,000 companies with SharePoint servers are at risk, and the U.S. has the largest number of these companies. Silas Cutler, researcher at Michigan-based cybersecurity firm Census, says this is a dream for ransomware operators. The Washington Post reports the breach has already affected U.S. federal and state agencies, universities, and energy companies. Now, Microsoft released a new security patch for customers to apply to their SharePoint servers to, as the company puts it, mitigate active attacks targeting on-premise servers. They added they're also working to roll out other patches. Shares of Microsoft in the pre-market down about 0.1%. In New York, I'm John Tucker, Bloomberg Radio.
And that's news when you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Karen Moskow.
I'm Nathan Hager, and this is Bloomberg.